Mark chapter 2. We've been in Mark chapter 2. We're going to finish up what we started. Mark chapter 2, and we're going to finish in 3. If you're in the Abundant Life Bible, it's on page 762. Mark chapter 2. So we've been learning some things about Jesus. Does Jesus go with the current flow of tradition? No. He's like totally outside. We've been talking about the fact that we talked a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit more today about the Torah. Does anybody know what the Torah is, as we understand in the Bible? What's the Torah? First 5, the books of Moses. The Torah, the books of Moses. And it's called the Torah, the book of the law. And there was this group that raised up about this. Never mind for a minute. There was this group that started. Sorry, got a little close, didn't I? That started. I don't know, 100 years maybe before Christ, something like that. And they're called the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were a group that the whole premise of who they were was to follow the Torah and make sure everyone else did. Okay, you got that? Follow the Torah and make sure everyone else did. And what they were teaching was, if you could perfectly follow the Torah, and everybody did, Jesus would come. Okay? How y'all doing with that? Y'all good law-abiding, keeping? Jesus wouldn't be coming? No, Jesus. So that's really, Jesus comes in and he says, I'd really like you to understand that Moses really talked about me. I'm the one that he was talking about. I'm the one who is, and in fact, if you're looking for, Jesus to come, it's, what did he call himself? I am. I am he. He would say that. I am he. The one that Moses saw at the burning bush declared that his name was I am. And you see Jesus over and over and over again, especially in the book of John. Jesus would identify himself as I am. And he does it. There's some privilege that's been taken when sometimes when the writing is and they say I am he. I am the one, but he's really declaring that he is I am, the one that Moses saw. So Moses is talking about, in the Torah, as he wrote this, really about understanding a relationship with Jesus, a relationship with this one who would come. The interesting thing is, when he came, they didn't like him so much. When he came, he really opposed the rules and regulations and restrictions that these Pharisees and others were putting on the people. So we see Jesus. We've already seen him doing some kind of crazy things. He touches lepers, and people dig holes in roofs and put people down on mats in front of Jesus that's been paralyzed, and then they get up and they pick up their mat, and the crowd has to part so they can get out. The crowd wouldn't part so he could get in. The crowd parts so he can get out. Isn't that interesting? So we talked about that. We talked about the crowds. We talked about how he called these crowds that are all coming at him. He sees this tax collector. He calls the tax collector, says, "Follow me, be my disciple." So Levi gets up and he does. And then there's a dinner party with all the sinners in town. And Jesus goes. He goes and hangs out with people that are needy, people who are downcast, people who you just don't go see. I mean, that's what Jesus did, right? That's who he hung out with, like me. Hang out with me. He hangs out with us, Chrissy. He likes he likes it. Yeah, he likes us a lot. Yeah. Somebody came here one time and they had come kind of to check out who we were, and I asked him afterwards. I said, "So what did you think?" And she said, "It's just like a bunch of misfits." And I said, "Woo! That's what we're looking for." We're his favorites. Okay, so now something happens, and we're going to have a discussion here about understanding Sabbath. So Miss Suzanne told a story about creation today, and at the end of creation, what did Jesus do? Kids, what did Jesus do at the end of creation? Rested. On what? On the Sabbath, Joshua. There was this day, he said, let's just you and me, chill. We could use that language today. Jesus says, let's chill, right? Hang out with me, right? All right. But here's what happens. There became this idea that there's a particular way to keep the Sabbath. And keeping the Sabbath had hundreds and hundreds of regulations. Hundreds of regulations. You could only sew one stitch. If you sew two, you're breaking the Sabbath. You could walk a half a mile. If you walk more than a half a mile, it's more than a Sabbath day's journey, and that was breaking the Sabbath. You couldn't light a fire. If this one was funny for me. If it's muddy outside, and of course it's all, it's not concrete back then. Maybe some rock, but there's some dirt, and you come to go inside, and you want to wipe your feet off. Make sure you don't wipe them on the side of the building, because that would be stuccoing. That's working. Make sure you wipe them. You can't carry a child. You couldn't set a broken bone. If a building collapsed, you could move enough rubble to find somebody who might be under it, but you couldn't do what you needed to do to make them well. You could find them, but you couldn't, do things to heal them. I mean, that just goes on and on and on and on, what you could and couldn't do. You couldn't carry anything. So if you have a cold and you need a tissue, my thinking is, I didn't read this, but this is my thinking. And you need a tissue, right? Because your nose is going to run. Well, safety pin it somewhere, because you can't carry it. But then it could be there and just go, whatever it is you do. Hope you're a good aim. Yeah, don't get it on your neighbor. Yeah, okay. So do you have a picture of the environment that the people were living in at the time? Oppressed. So let me ask you. That would be like swimming. So then there are other things, restrictions, not past your ankles. There are other restrictions that have come in. And what do you suppose God would want the Sabbath to be? In fact, the Bible states it. The Sabbath is to be a delight. It's supposed to be a delight. He gave it, and we're trying to keep it. Oh. All right. So Jesus comes along, and he really rocks the boat. Okay? I mean, he really, really rocks the boat. For those of you who are not familiar with the history of the Seventh-day Adventist faith, Seventh-day Adventists are anybody who believes in the imminent, literal return of Jesus Christ. So there's lots of Adventists. There's, Presbyterian Adventists and Catholic Adventists and Methodist Adventists, non-denominational Adventists, Pentecostal Adventists. I mean, there's Adventists everywhere. If you believe in the literal imminent return of Christ, you're an Adventist. That's what it means. Seventh day pertains to Sabbath. And this absolute belief that God created a special day of time to be with us. We have taken control of the Sabbath and decided what it should look like. Okay, you with me? So if you're not familiar with, you haven't had history with Seventh-day Adventists, you'll be unfamiliar with a little bit that I'm going to talk about, but I want you to hear what Jesus really said and or did, okay? So there are regulations, rules, restrictions that have been put on, man-made, tradition that has been put on the Sabbath so that we can keep it holy. Okay, are you with me so far? Okay. So that if you are especially child, we could imagine as children, some of us grew up in this environment. Some of us grew up in the oppressive kind of environment. So the Sabbath was definitely not a delight. It's not the day I looked forward to. It wasn't the time that I was excited about. We studied at home with my little granddaughters here, with Mona and Nevaeh. We studied creation, and we learned about the Sabbath, and it got super duper exciting, didn't it? It was like, oh, this is awesome. We love the Sabbath. Okay, like the Sabbath's good. That's where we should be. Let me show you here in Mark chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 18. Jesus is going to teach us a little bit about the Sabbath. And here's what I want you to be listening for. I want you to be listening for and watching how Jesus engages the Sabbath. Okay? Once when John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, some people came to Jesus and asked, "Why don't your disciples fast like John's disciples and the Pharisees do?" Jesus replied, "Do wedding guests fast while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. They can't fast while the groom is with them, but someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast." Okay, let me stop for just a minute. Fasting was a spiritual ritual that was engaged in different ways by different people. There was a single fast that was required by the people, by the Jews, a single fast that was required, and that was once a year on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, once a year. There were some that believed that you fasted during the different festivals that they would have, and so they would fast maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. The Pharisees fasted on Mondays and Thursdays. Now, they had this idea that fasting was for the benefit of the fulfilling of the covenant. We'll talk about the covenant some other day. Covenant's the promise between God and us. The thing was, the fulfillment of the covenant was standing in front of them. Why would you keep fasting? The fulfillment's right here, in front of you. And so the disciples of Jesus, weren't fasting. They were with the fulfillment of the covenant. Why would I fast? The strange thing here is that when you have a wedding, does the groom usually run away? If the groom leaves, you lose your husband. Yeah? The groom leaves, party's over. Everybody's going home because something bad happened. Talks about the groom leaving. When he leaves, then they'll fast. Now there's a reason. Verse 21, besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? So those of you who are seamstresses, if you have old cloth and you patch a hole with new cloth and then you wash it, what does the new cloth do? It shrinks. And when it shrinks, what's it going to do to the old cloth? It actually tears it. It comes apart. So you wouldn't do that. And then it says, for the new patch would shrink and rip away the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear than before. Verse 22. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the new wine would burst the wineskins, and the wine and the skins would both be lost. New wine calls for new wineskins. I want to read something to you because it's stated here better than I could state it. If I can find it quickly. So Jesus, here we go. There was talking about a wedding feast, so kind of putting these two things together. The question posed by the image of the wedding feast and the two Adam-like parables is not whether disciples will, like sewing a new patch on an old garment or refilling an old container, make room for Jesus in their already full agendas and lives. So are we looking to make room for Jesus? The question is whether they will forsake business as usual and join the wedding celebration, whether they will become entirely new receptacles for the expanding fermentation of Jesus and the gospel in their lives. So Jesus comes along and he says, no, I got something new. Like, don't just try to put some new in the old. I got something new, and I really want you to understand what that is. New thinking, new perspectives. Talking about thinkers, a new thinker, yeah? Think in new ways, new thoughts, new perspective. So he comes and he says, I got something new and different. Don't just try to fit me into what you're already got. I really want you to be all new. 2 Corinthians 5:17, behold, all things are new. You're a new creature in Christ. And being new, all the old is gone away. It's just gone. Behold, all things are new. Okay? Brand new. All right. You getting that a little bit? New cloth doesn't need patches. You are correct. New cloth doesn't. But when you put new wine in an old wineskin, the new wine ferments and it expands and it will bust what it's in. So can you contain Jesus? So this is what it's talking about. Do you contain him? Do you try and put him, a little bit of him, with a lot of the old? Put him in a container so that he can't get out. Okay? So now we're going to go to something that shows you cannot contain Jesus, okay? One Sabbath day, now on the Sabbath, one Sabbath day as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples began breaking off heads of grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, "Look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath?" Not keeping the Sabbath regulations. I'm hungry. Harvest the grain. Eat the grain. I'm not sure I'd eat raw wheat, but maybe. I don't know. Break my teeth. It was considered harvesting, which would be work, which you couldn't do, according to the regulation. Jesus said to them, "Haven't you ever read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God during the days when Abiathar was high priest and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests are allowed to eat. And he also gave some of them to his companions." So David, he's running away from Saul. He actually did a bad thing there. David goes to the priest and presents himself as he's by himself. "Did you bring your friends?" "No, not this time. But I'm really, really hungry. I need some bread, and I got a journey I got to make, and so I need to have all this bread." Saul found out he'd been there, and Saul had all the priests killed. Like 85 of them. Had them all killed. But not because David ate the holy bread. David went into the sanctuary, to the tabernacle, and it was allowed that he eat that bread that was only supposed to be for the priests. Jesus said, "Do you not know that? I mean, you're teachers of the law. You don't know this story?" He's trying to give a new picture, a new perspective of what is the Sabbath. Then Jesus said to them, verse 27, "The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of the people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath." Jesus gave the Sabbath free, free, free. And said, "Just come hang out with me." So notice where Jesus goes on the Sabbath. Jesus went into the synagogue. Okay, comes to church, he shows up. He went to the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. They just did something they weren't supposed to do on the Sabbath. They're out in the grain fields and they pick some grain. Not supposed to do that. So now Jesus comes to church where the folks are, and he does something fascinating to me. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, I need a man with a deformed hand. I need a man with no man with deformed hands? Mike has a deformed hand. So you get called out. And do you want everybody to know that you got a deformity going on?
Not really.
Not really? So you're kind of hiding it, and there you are, and Jesus is standing up here and he calls you out. "Hey, Mike, you with a deformed hand. I want you to come stand right here." What's that feel like? How you doing right now? Not very well. That's what I thought. Okay, you're showing a point right here. Here's this guy. I mean, how does he really want to do this? He says, "Come and stand in front of everyone." That would be really awkward. Like, if I knew you were going to do this, I would not have come to church today. Chrissy'd be walking. Yeah. Mike's staying home. Gayle's calling me out. No way, I'm not going.
When I read it, I was thinking that they may have brought him there because it says they wanted to see
if he would heal him. Sure.
So I thought he was maybe brought there by the Pharisees.
Maybe. They set a lot of things up for Jesus. Maybe. It doesn't explicitly say that, but maybe. Okay, so now notice what happens. Then he turns to his critics. Okay, church. Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath? Or is it a day for doing evil? Oh, Joshua says good deeds. You couldn't do good deeds on the Sabbath. It would be working. It was against the rules.
So if it's not good, then
Oh, okay. But notice what he then says. Is this a day to save a life or to destroy it? Because you see, while they're wondering if he's going to heal this man so they can accuse him of working on the Sabbath, they're plotting to kill him. They're plotting to kill him. They're worried in the moment about whether he's going to heal this man and do good while they are plotting in their minds to kill him.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I thought it was good deeds on the Sabbath because Jesus created the Sabbath.
Oh, Joshua.
Yes.
Joshua. Somebody just said something to you. Say it again. Say it again.
Me?
Louder. Who said that? Who said preach it, Joshua?
I said, preach it, Joshua.
Tell him.
Preach it, Joshua. I want to hear that again.
Okay, notice. But they wouldn't answer him. Go ahead. Oh, did you need a mic to do that? Okay, the microphone, please. Here you go.
Preach it, Joshua. Preach it, boy.
I thought it was good deeds because Jesus created the Sabbath.
There you go. There you go. Thank you, Joshua.
Is Jesus good or bad?
Jesus is good.
Does he do evil or does he do awful? I mean good.
He does good.
He does good. He doesn't do evil?
No, he does not do evil.
So is the Sabbath the day to do good or to do evil?
To do good.
Is Sabbath the day to save a life or destroy a life?
Save a life.
Oh. So what should we be doing then on the Sabbath? What should it be about? What should the Sabbath be about?
Well, probably saving a life and rest.
Oh. Can you save a life and rest at the same time?
No, I mean one after the other.
Oh, which one would you do first?
Probably save a life first.
And then that would kind of wear you out. And then you need a rest?
Yes.
Okay. Good job, man. I like that. You're welcome. Oh, Isaac wants it. Oh, Mommy, I think you need to take Isaac out. Yeah, Mommy. Yeah, go with Mommy, buddy. Yes, ma'am.
We can't wait to save a life because a life needs to be saved now.
We can't wait. So if the life needs to be saved today, we should take care of that? Not wait till tomorrow? Okay. Well, notice this. Because this is fascinating to me. They would not answer him. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Another one might say he was deeply distressed. Then he said to the man, Mike, hold out your hand. So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. I'd like to invite you to go through your Bible and find all the instances of Jesus and Sabbath. And I'd like you to discover where he was and what he was doing. And I think you'll find something interesting